So United Way supported a few different areas that was funded through this particular grant opportunity. One was our Meals on Wheels program. We also supported our transportation services. And finally, at the time, a newly developed service, which we're now calling our Mobile Adult Day program. Sure. So as I'm sure you can appreciate, when we received this particular grant, it was very early in the pandemic. There was a whole lot of uncertainty around, which way was the pandemic going to go? What was our funding implications? How was our programming going to work? And that was kind of our mindset at the time. And we came to learn that programs like our Meals on Wheels and our transportation programs became almost more relevant and more important through the pandemic in many ways, because people at that time and still to this day need to have the food on their plate, a quality, nutritious meal, in particular at a time when this grant happened, there was a lot of restrictions that didn't allow caregivers to come into the home. So, perhaps if a daughter came up from the city once a week to help support mom and dad, that wasn't happening when this grant was received. And we saw a massive increase in demand for some of our programs. I'll highlight our Meals on Wheels in particular, which at the time was seeing an increase of 27% in demand. And the support that United Way provided to the program allowed us to ensure that those who needed a meal got a meal. And what that meant for some was some subsidy, because finances were a challenge for many members of our community at the time. It also allowed us to increase our capacity to meet that demand, in terms of we needed freezers to hold our food and bags to get these meals out the door. So that was important to allow us to basically run the program and not have to put a cap on how many meals we could get out the door. For programs like our transportation program, for example, we knew that the demand for a program like that continued despite the pandemic. People still need to get to their dialysis appointments. They still need to get to their chemotherapy appointments. And again, finances were challenged for many individuals. It continued to be challenged for many individuals. So that allowed us to provide a little bit of subsidy to ensure that people were able to get to where they could go at a time when caregivers were not in the same position as normal to help out mom, dad, or their spouse, for example. The Mobile Adult Day program, which was just kind of in its infancy when we received these funds, it didn't exist prior to the pandemic because we had a group-based adult day program. But of course, we weren't allowed to run group-based programs, and in and out through time of the pandemic. Sometimes we're allowed to offer them, sometimes we're not. But we knew that the clients who typically come to our program still had needs. And not only did they have needs for social activation and engagement, but their caregivers needed a break. Everything was falling on their shoulders, because at the time when, again, we first received this funding, people weren't leaving their home, and there was considerable lockdowns similar to the state of emergency today. So we transitioned the program to be able to free up our staff to go into people's homes and provide up to 4 hours of relief for individuals, so that the caregiver could go do groceries, they could go for a walk. And of course, the client that we were supporting had some engagement and activation. So I guess to answer your question in a quick way, why this program? Because it was needed, and it allowed us to make sure our clients were supported. So the combination of these sort of three areas that were supported benefit the community in several ways. We know that this allowed some of our most vulnerable seniors and adults with special needs to have a nutritious meal brought to their home. It allowed them to get to that essential medical appointment, like dialysis or like chemotherapy. And it was vitally important to lift that new mobile adult day program up off the ground so that they could have support in their home in a way that sort of hadn't been presented to them previously because of the isolation and the burden that the pandemic put on families, because programs like our adult day program couldn't run at the time. So it really benefited the community because it allowed them options to ensure that their needs were still met. Across the board, our programs have had to change multiple times through the pandemic. One of the biggest areas that we've obviously started to venture in, like most of the world, is that we offer a lot virtually. And what we've had to do through the pandemic, not only for the 3 programs that you were particularly, or United Way was particularly helpful in funding, but across the community care spectrum of services, we were able to ensure that the programs continued to adapt to sort of meet what the restrictions allowed us to do at any given time. It, in particular, for a program like Meals on Wheels, which there was some support for, it allowed us in the early days to meet demand that was being put on the program, and it laid a foundation for us to continue to meet that demand. And recently, we actually expanded our hot meals program by opening a second kitchen, which allows us to double our cooking capacity. And I think some of that is attributed to the early day support that we got from United Way to support our community, to show there's a need here that we need to continue to build up our services. So it has really allowed us to continue to adapt to meet our community's needs. I would say that more than ever, in my mind anyway, the pandemic has showed how vital community services are. When I think of the 3 sort of program areas that were supported by this particular grant, they don't work well virtually. For example, you can't deliver a meal virtually, you can't deliver a ride virtually, and you can't provide respite as effectively virtually, we found. And so what I learned about community services is that in a time of a pandemic, they're as vital, if not more vital than ever. These particular services have never stopped. They have continued, and they have to be delivered in person, and they have done so because that's the only way that they operate. And we've seen the increase in demand in some of them because they are so vital. And I think the other thing that I've learned is the fact that our programs have to be and have been nimble and flexible to sort of weave in and out of the restrictions that are placed on us to ensure the safety of our community. And with that, the dedication, the resilience of our staff and volunteers has just shown through this entire experience. And that is guided by our clients, who are our North Star, that they guide what we need, and we try to respond to that in the best way that we can. And United Way, the support from United Way has allowed us to do that. A priority is that we have to remain nimble. We have to be able to continue to be responsive to what is in front of us, because we know that it changes daily. We're literally sitting here today or tomorrow waiting for a notification from the province to determine what are we allowed to do next week. And it's important that we stay nimble and responsive, and continue to find creative ways to support our clients because we know that the needs have not gone away despite the pandemic. In some areas, they've increased considerably, obviously. So we, in terms of impact from a perspective of how many meals are supported to people, we track stats from that perspective to say, here's how many people we served, and this is how many meals are sent out the door on a daily or monthly basis. But also the anecdotal feedback through client support, client feedback letters help give us an indication of the value and impact that these give on the ground. And we have client experience surveys that actually we're just tabulating at the moment, where we try to check in on clients at a more global level to see what themes have emerged over the course of a year. And this year is particularly important to keep tabs on because it's been so different. So we will look at those experience surveys to help kind of quantify and give us a more quantifiable indication of the impact that the program has had. The impacts means is that they can rely on community care, and in particular our Meals on Wheels program, to deliver them a nutritious, freshly cooked, well-balanced meal when they need it. And not only does it provide them a great quality, great tasting meal, but it also provides them a reassurance wellness check-in when that volunteer or staff member, in some cases, drops off the meal. For the client, there's an interaction there. For that caregiver who's living in Toronto and not able to travel up to the city of Kawartha Lakes to check in on their parents because of some of the restrictions, it gives them some peace of mind because they know that someone is checking in, even for a short period, on mom or dad as they get their meal dropped off each day. I would just say that we're certainly grateful for United Way's support through this tremendously difficult time, not only for the 3 programs that we talked about today, but also in some other areas. It just shows how our community continues to rally together to ensure that those who are most vulnerable in our community have their needs met, and that we, as one of the many agencies that provide service in our community, are well positioned to meet those needs. So thank you, Maddie, and thank United Way and Penny and the entire team for your support.